test that everything's working. Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? Just testing, making sure everything's working and set up here. Yeah, we're good. All right, perfect. So what I want to do today is I want to start talking about and get into Adobe Photoshop. There are so many cool things about this piece of software that I just love. You know, we talk about, let me just change my lighting a little bit here. Okay, yeah, good. So many things about this piece of software that I love. I've been using this software since, let's see, Adobe Photoshop 5.0, which would have been 1996. So I've been using this piece of software for a really, really, really long time. And it's kind of funny that if you saw the first version that I used in 1996, it doesn't differ that much from what we have today. There are just some new features, but like I could have created tutorials in 1996 and they would be 100% relevant to today, which is, I find just really funny and interesting. So let's get into the software and do some stuff. So Adobe Photoshop. So what I have up here on the screen is just what you see when you first start using Adobe Photoshop. We're just going to create a new file just to start. Let me pull this up on the correct screen. All right, so what they're asking me to do here is, you see all these things saying custom. And basically what that's looking for is, like, let's say I copied like a screenshot of my computer. It's actually looking at the size of what I just pulled. Now what I do whenever I'm creating a new image, you can look up here, they have like examples of, like, if I'm doing something for the web, they give me like different sizes of things I might want to use, like iPhone 6, iPad, that kind of stuff. But it's on recent right now, which is fine. But basically what I want to do is they're looking at my width and height. I always go by pixels whenever I'm on the computer. I'm like a big, always pixels. So let's just say like 500 by 500. I always ask myself, what's the resolution? For the web, 72, perfect. If I'm printing this, I'm going to keep it at like 300. And we've got, you know, color mode, RGB is perfect for what I'm doing right now, putting it on the web. If I was printing this, I would put it in CMYK, so remember that. On the monitor, RGB, printing, CMYK. Background is white, fine. If I wanted like a clear background, I'd have to make this a PNG image, but we're not going to do that. Just go to create. And we get into the Adobe Photoshop interface. And basically the interface is pretty simple. So the top, we got all our options. And it seems really confusing at first when you first get in. And then we have all of our tools on the left-hand sidebar. And there are tons of tools. And each of the tools that has a little like caret thing, like triangle at the bottom here, you press that, hold it in, and they give you more options. And one of the fun things to do when you first start Photoshop is just to sit there and play around with all these tools and see what they do. Super fun. I remember being like, you know, 17 years old and literally just sitting there with this piece of software and just like trying to figure out, like, what do all these tools do? How do I use each one? I realized after I took my first Photoshop course in like 97, 98 that it was significantly easier when someone taught you how to do it. My Photoshop skills improved drastically over the course of 15 weeks from me taking a course and learning how to use this stuff versus me just playing around with it myself. Then on the right-hand side of the screen, we have our colors here, our swatches and colors. Swatches are just individual colors they pick out for you, and this is where I can actually, you know, like choose my color. And you can see that affects the color down here. And then we have our libraries, which I don't really need to talk about that today. In fact, I really don't use these too much ever. And then one of the most important things, which is our layers. And I find that layers are one of the big things that people have a little trouble with understanding at first. So the first thing about layers is layers are like a cake. Or if you've ever seen like the, you know, if you were a kid and had like the Invisible Man, they're just like that. But layers are like a cake. So like the first layer, the background, I look at like if I was making a cake or a pie, the background is the pan. And in fact, I never touch the background. I don't want to do anything to it. I never use it. I act like it's not even there. I always create a new layer and start on layer 1. So very similarly to a cake, layer 1 would be like whatever I'm doing is on top of the background. And then if I create another layer, it's on top. So think of like a, you know, a layered cake. Like you cut in it and see inside. You know, when you were looking down, all you saw was that top icing. You didn't see like the cake batter underneath and then the other row of icing and like whatever else you got in there. Photoshop is no different. Layer 1 covers background. Layer 2 covers layer 1. But if I only have like a small little square in layer 1 or layer 2, it won't cover anything else around it. So layers are something to play around with and get used to working with. Learn how to organize them using folders and play around with them because it's extremely important. So that's the Adobe Photoshop interface. Basically like how to use everything. The cool thing about this piece of software is that the cool thing about Adobe Photoshop is that if you learn Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator is really easy to learn. In fact, all of the Adobe products have a very similar look and feel, which is really cool. So like if you can use Adobe Photoshop, when you go into Adobe Dreamweaver, it's a different type of software, but it's very similar look and feel. Photoshop used to be owned by, Adobe always owned Photoshop. It was Macromedia that bought Dreamweaver and Flash and stuff that sold them. So no, Adobe was always Photoshop. Adobe used to have some other image software like Image Ready, which they phased out. But Illustrator and Photoshop are very similar. So if you can use one, it's not like a crazy idea to use another. It's kind of like driving a car. Like, well, if I can drive like one Ford, when I get into another Ford, it's like similar. I actually only drive Toyotas now, so I should use Toyota as a better example of that. But it's you know, the same kind of thing. So Photoshop is one of my favorite pieces of software. I really, really, really use this all the time. If I'm creating a PowerPoint presentation, I can't tell you how many times I've had to edit one of the images. When I worked in corporate, I've explained this a bunch of times in a bunch of my other videos. I was never a graphic designer. I love art. You know, I've showed my paintings before in the background, and I love art and stuff like that. But I've never been a graphic designer professionally, but I've always used Photoshop in my work professionally. When people at my work found out that I could use Photoshop, they would send me images and be like, stop what you're doing. We need you to get in on this presentation with us and help us develop it because we need these kind of images. So it was just like, hey, we need someone cut out of this image. Do you know how to do that? Like all that kind of stuff was such a useful skill. Being able to use Photoshop, understanding the basics of design is something everyone in instructional design, but I think all K-12 teachers, everyone in corporate, every employee anywhere, being able to use software like this is extremely important. Now, Photoshop's expensive when you buy it, so even if you don't have it at home, like to use, now I know all my students have access to it, but like if you didn't, there are free alternatives that work exactly the same. So learn Photoshop, and when you go and use one of the free alternatives, it's going to have the same look and feel because they're just copies of it, and you can use them. So pretty simple. All right, so just some basic stuff I want to do today. Just some of the stuff that I've been talking about. So my students in my interface design course that I'm teaching right now have been playing around with different things this week. They've been cutting people out of images, starting to play around with some of the effects. Let's talk about some of the cool, fun, first things you do when you play around with Photoshop. So I am going to actually just open up an image. I'm going to ignore this thing that I created right here. I'm going to go to open, and we are going to pull up an image. Oh, and I have my sample images here. These are, it's so funny that my kids look so young in these images because they're so old now. Let's pull up my image of Kai. This is a pretty funny one. I don't feel like digging around for other images right now. But, so this is a picture of my son when he was, oh man, he had to be like 3 years old now. He is 9. Now he's like a kid. He's not like a toddler. I still have a kid that age. I can't get rid of like baby. I don't have babies anymore. I can't get rid of like toddlers. Like they're all around me. So, I like that they're growing up. I can't deal with I'm way past the phase of little kids right now. But so we got this picture of Kai, and I actually use this picture in a bunch of my videos to edit stuff because it's a great picture for it because it's so simple. It's got a good background in that the background's blurry, but it's really simple. The background contrasts well with him. And it's just him in the image, so I can take stuff out of it pretty simple. So one of the things I like to do with Photoshop when we first start. So first thing, when you open up an image like this, first thing I always do, I go to select all. Select all. I make sure I see this scrolling border. And I go to copy and paste. And I can do that using all shortcuts. Photoshop has like a bazillion shortcuts. There are literally 30 ways to do everything in this piece of software. And I can use, I know all the shortcuts. I actually have a cool poster in my office hanging up right above my office that has all the Photoshop shortcuts, just so I remember them all. But what I did is I selected all, copied, and pasted. Why did I do that? Because the first thing I said 5 minutes ago, never, ever, ever work on this background layer. Act like it's not there. So I put everything in layer 1. This also makes it so that if I decide that I mess up layer 1, I can just delete it and start over. Additionally, another tip with layers is every time I do something in Photoshop, I create a new layer so that if I mess up again, I've only lost that layer, not everything else. Okay, so what do I want to do to him? What do I want to do to Kai? There's so many different things I can do to this image. I want to show everyone. So I've been talking about, in my class, I've been talking about the selecting tools. I probably should start to cover some of them and talk a little bit about them. I haven't talked about all of the ways to do it yet, so maybe I'll even get into some of the more advanced stuff. So let's say, so first of all, if I wanted to select Kai out of this picture, if my goal was to get a picture of Kai that I could cut him out of the picture, I did a bad job right now. Because if I want to, as I said during my video on Tuesday when I talked about backgrounds, like if I'm taking a picture of something and I want it cut out, I love like the green screen or something like that where it's going to be super easy because look what happens right now. Let's say, let me get my magic wand tool. Oh, that was a pretty good selection. But look at this. I'll hold down Control. So it keeps selecting. I'm holding down Shift right now, and I'm selecting him. I'm trying to get him out of the image, but this is not a simple task, especially right here when I get into these. I've already selected some of his shorts, because what Photoshop is doing is it's trying to look at. So remember, Photoshop doesn't know what Kai is, or he's a person or anything. It doesn't know anything about him. What Photoshop is doing is it's looking at similar colors and trying to, using AI to interpret, using some kind of algorithm to interpret what colors should be selected and what should not. So what happens is when I have this tool, I press the Shift key, it adds to my, I keep adding to my selection. When I hold the Alt key, it subtracts from my selection. I always have to remember what those are, especially like those of you on Macs or anything like that. It's different. I don't know Mac at all anymore. Only PC now. But if you're on the Mac, it's just a different button. Maybe it's like Open Apple or something. It might be the same. I just know I always run into issues with my Mac users who are like, well, it's not the same button on my computer. And I'm like, well, I don't have that kind. Just, you're gonna have to play around a little bit because I don't have a Mac to test. University does not want to buy me 50 different kinds of computers, unfortunately. So to select Kai out, this is one way. But even like you doing this, if I zoom in here, I'm going to zoom in using the shortcut key. When I want to select something out of an image, you know, it might have looked okay that I selected everything perfectly, but look at this. I missed his whole entire shoulder right here. So if I was going to really select him, I would have to go back and try to get that out. And I don't like that. You know, if I want to select someone out of an image, I really want a green screen image. Like, let me just pull one up here. I should have one on my desktop, I think. Ooh, let's see. Why are these huge? I want to be able to see them. You. All right, so here's a picture of me. I don't use this picture for anything. I have a similar one that I do use. This was me cutting things out. But you can see I actually used a white background, or I might have used a green screen for this. But look what happens when we zoom in. So notice the green here. So I could make this, I didn't actually end up using this image for anything. So if I was trying to cut me out of this picture, I always like to zoom into the pixelated version where I can see literally like each shade. And I would trim this green out to really select myself out. I would take the eraser tool or something. So notice that my brush is huge. Let's shrink that brush down to pixels. Oh, do we like all this stuff? Let's use the block. Notice how it's taking part of the white background. I just would need to repaste some white in there. This will make my image much better. However, you can barely tell, especially that's 100%. Especially if I'm looking at the image, like if I put it on YouTube right here, can you tell that I did, can you see any of that color right now? No. So that's why you have to ask yourself, like, what am I using this for? What level of detail do I need to make this? Because when I zoom in, I see all the things that are wrong. But if I'm using it at this size, it didn't make a difference. And so one of the things, a lesson here, is when you start talking about, like, you can always make an image smaller, but you can't make it bigger. So here is 100% pixels. Here's 200%. 300%, you can start to see the pixelation. 400, you can way see it. You can't make an image bigger. If I made this image, wanted to make it like 5 feet by 5 feet, this is what it's going to look like. This is no different than like your HD television. So like when someone buys when you buy a 32-inch television, you can't find a 32 or like 24-inch HD TV that's like bigger than 720p. Because our eyes can't, there's no reason to make it 4K or 1080p because your eyes can't tell the difference. Your eyes are stuck. That's why you won't see like 1080 pixels there because your eyes can't tell. So when you buy like a 72-inch TV, they're all going to be 4K though. Same thing with our computer monitor and like the way like we trick our eyes all the time. But we can't make an image bigger. We can only make an image smaller. So I can make it smaller and it actually looks better as I make it a little smaller. Okay, let's go back to Kai. So let's say I want to cut Kai out of a picture. The first thing I want to try to like cut someone out of a picture is my spot healing brush because it's super, super, super easy to use. I literally just take my image and color. I mean, that didn't really do anything that I like. I don't like this at all, but I can keep using it. What it's doing is it's just trying to, I mean, the software is trying to figure something out. This is why I say, like, before you do an image, before you, when you're taking the photo, you try to do everything correctly so that you don't have to mess with it in Photoshop. Let me go to my history and undo that. History. Oh. There we go. Okay, so let's say, so we've tried to take him out using the spot healing brush. It didn't really work too well, right? So what else can I do? Well, what I probably have to do, unfortunately, with this image is I need to take the slice tool. Not the slice tool. I need to take the Polygon or magnetic lasso. Probably start with the magnetic lasso. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in and I am going to use the lasso. And then I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to have to edit it. So to cut someone out of the picture, it's so much work. You guys all did this. Those of you in my class did this for your assignment. It is so much work to cut someone out when, if I would have just taken the picture correctly, or like right now I'm wasting time. If I would have just taken this picture with him in front of a green screen, this would be a 1-second project. This is why you plan your photos out beforehand. Now, obviously that's not going to happen all the time. You know, I'm at the beach. I'm not planning the photo. I just happen to want to cut them out after the fact. So now I got to deal with everything. And it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to have to, so basically what I do is I start with the magnetic lasso because it tries to attach itself to light colors. It does a decent job, actually. Let's see what it looks like. Basically what I've done is I've copy and pasted. Not bad with the first round of a magnetic lasso. That's not terrible. I mean, it doesn't look great, but notice if I start zooming out, the only thing you can even see that's imperfect is this right here. This little blue. And I don't even know if someone would notice that. So the further you zoom it out, it almost makes those imperfections like non-existent. So depending on how you're using your image, like I could literally just have cut them out like that and throw them into PowerPoint or something like that, like pretty quick and pretty easy. These are my two favorite selection tools, the magnetic lasso and the Polygon lasso. So basically, let me go back in time here. There we go to my magnetic lasso. Oops. Oh, I pressed a button by mistake. Let's go back. Magnetic lasso. There we go. Then what I like to do is I'm going to go into my Polygon lasso and I very slowly add or subtract to the selection. Shift adds, Alt deletes. So if I want to delete, if I want to add, I can add. Very simple. But selecting is such an important skill. And just playing with these tools. And, you know, I say that my favorite tools are the Polygon and magnetic lasso, but you have to remember those are the tools that I learned Photoshop on. These tools right here are all pretty new, and by new, like last 10 years. But I just never took to them because I already had a method to do this. A lot of things Photoshop does is finding 50 ways to do everything. So I can watch one video on YouTube about a tutorial on how to like select someone, and then I'm going to watch another video. I can watch 10 videos on YouTube about how to select someone out of a picture, and every single one is going to be different. And some of that could be different versions of Photoshop, but it's just going to be because there are literally 10 different ways. Like someone's going to use a mask, someone's going to use the spot healing brush, someone's going to use one of these tools, someone's going to use something different. There are like 10 different ways to do everything. So it's one of the interesting things about Photoshop is that you want to almost learn all the different tools so that you can find out, well, what do I like best? What works best for me? First of all, I have options for each situation and I know what I want to do. But I almost liken it to programming or like painting or some kind of art, and programming isn't art in that there's the right way to do it is the right way that works for your goal. But there are several ways to do it. Like I can add color to something, I can take color away, or I can brighten or darken. Like there are, and accomplish the same exact thing. So let me show that a little bit. All right, so I've talked about cutting someone out of a picture. So there are just a bazillion different things that I can show you how to do. Some of the things that I want to show right now. So let's go to, so one of the first things that I do in Photoshop, besides playing with all these tools, is playing with all the filters. So if you're watching this and you haven't played with these filters yet, go do it. Learn what each of them do and have fun. And basically, so there are a couple different ways to play with filters. So first of all, like some of them aren't going to do anything. Like you don't want to create 3D out of this. If I click like, you got to learn what each one, like what does Distort Ripple do? Like what's that going to do to my image? Well, what it does is it pulls up this little box so that I can preview, fortunately. Oh, I can't make it any bigger. No, it's just giving me a larger effect. You can see, preview, what it does to my image. But you learn all of these effects so that you can start actually using them. And then next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start showing you how to apply all of this stuff to like, how do I take this image right here and how do I brighten the color of the sand? How do I brighten the color of the water to make it a little more blue? How do I start to do things like that? How do I change the way Kai looks? You know, because those are the things people want to do in Photoshop, especially when you start talking about like, you know, like I'm using something for a presentation and like, so I had to get a mole removed from my face in the fall semester. I had to wear this big bandage on my cheek for like 2 weeks while this thing healed. Because the guy, I mean, I literally thought he was going to freeze it off. And he's like, I'm going to need to he put a needle in my face and like cut it. Like there was like a hole in my face. Like I literally thought he was going to freeze this thing and it was going to fall off. Like nothing. No, he cut it out, like cut a hole in my face. And it was like a sun mole that I get, like it's formed like every 5 years it comes back. He said it's basically like I don't even know what it is. It's nothing to be concerned about. It's nothing. It's just like from age or he said it's a bunch of skin that just collected and looks like a mole. He said it's not even really a mole, but he cut it out and he said hopefully he got it this time because he had to do it like 5 years ago. So that's when he froze it, much easier. But anyway, I had this big bandage on my face, and if I would have taken a picture of myself, like I wouldn't have wanted that there. So I'm going to show you how to like clean yourself up to like get rid of that kind of stuff, like things that aren't real. And I mean, you can make yourself look really fake. You know, we have like those apps on like Instagram and oh, why is my mind? I can't think of them. But anyway, all the like filters on apps where people like change the way they look and stuff. You can very easily, you know, all of those kinds of things were taken from different kinds of things that you can do in Photoshop. So getting back into these filters, which you're all familiar with filters, but it's fun to just literally sit here and play around with all of these and see what they do. Now, what I like to do is I like to go into the filter gallery. So if I go to filter gallery, let me pull that over here. What the filter gallery is actually a place where I can play around with all of them at one time and just see what they're going to do to my image. And I always see when someone learns Photoshop, this is like, they'll like send me an image of like that. And I'm like, okay, they played with the filter. Because I always like get that image right there. But you can see all the different stuff. It's fun just to play around with these. And sometimes you can get some cool effects. Like if you want something for an image that you like, you can use it or whatever. But fun to play around, fun to learn how these all work. And start to think about, well, how can I really apply this and use this? They are fun to play around with. I mean, there's just so many different things that one can do when you're first starting out. But I think learning all of these tools right here on the side, learning the filters, learning the basics of layers are super important. What else do I want to actually show today that I think is super important? I guess one other thing that I'll show is I'll talk about some of these adjustments. I guess the only ones I really want to talk about are brightness and contrast. So if I take an image and I took a photo and it was too dark or too bright, in fact, this photo maybe is a little too bright. I can go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast, and start to play with that. Actually, with this photo, I'd probably play with the contrast a little bit to just make him pop out a little bit. I pushed cancel. So if I were, someone asked a question, does it work with birthmarks? Yes. And you know what? Let me show you that. Let me show you how to take a birthmark off your face. Well, because I have one, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to do it to myself. I've debated surgery for this my whole life, but I don't get it. I was born with it. I'm okay with it. But you can't even hardly see it right there because I have a beard, kind of. But I have a mole on my face. That is a birthmark. It's fine. Like, I don't notice it, but I'm sure other people do. I don't know. Whatever. They can. I don't care. Like, I'm fine with it. But let's just say I'm like, you know what? I don't like this. I want to get rid of it. First thing I would try, spot healing brush. That brush is way too big. That's totally not perfect, but when we zoom out, it actually is perfect and it's completely gone. With the mole, without the mole. With the mole, without the mole. Huh. It's weird looking at myself without it. I'm so used to just seeing it there that it becomes like a party. I mean, I have it my whole life, as far as I can remember back as a kid. So yeah, you can totally get rid of anything that you don't want. It all depends. But yeah, we can potentially get rid of it. I mean, I can show you how to do it, but there's a couple different ways to get rid of things. That's what I just did is the simple, like the quick and dirty solution. Like, this is the easy way to do it. But I mean, we can do things like I can change my hair color. I can give myself muscle, like big muscles. I mean, you can do, when you hear about like someone being photoshopped for like a magazine cover or something, like they can do a lot of things, like tons and tons of, you can change a person 100%. You can do anything you can imagine you can do. You can do. So, you know, for an image. So that, you know, it makes it really difficult for me to believe any photo that I ever see because I know how significant you can change them. One of the other things I want to mention about these filters. So, you know, you see all these filters right here. But one of the big things about Photoshop, and this works for Premiere, like the video editing part of Adobe, Illustrator, and Photoshop, is that there are hundreds and thousands of filters that you can get online on different places. For example, there is a filter pack specifically designed to clean up your face and like body. There are filter packs that you can buy for that. There are filter packs that you can buy for everything. So you can, so you know, you look at the free stuff that comes with Photoshop, you can buy extra filters and you can get filters for free. They're really easy. It takes 1 second. All you do is put them in the filter folder in the Adobe folder on your computer and you've got the filter. It'll show up right here. But you can buy all kinds of cool, like you can buy filters that are like smoke effects or like fire effects, like all kinds of anything you can imagine someone has created a filter on it. But they cost money. You can buy filter packs that'll have like, you know, 200 filters for like $100, that kind of thing. Some filters like so there is a video. So for video, for Premiere, there is a face cleanup filter that my wife is like, if I ever do YouTube, like I need that. And I'm like, it's like $1,500 for the filter. So like, it's really expensive. So some of them can get really pricey. So depending on what your need is, will you ever buy it or not? But the filters can make your life really easily. I mean, anything that is a filter, I can just create by myself in Photoshop. But the filter does it in like the click of a button, like really simple. Like it's like an effect that's so simple and easy to use. So they're one of the things that is really fun to play around with at first when you first start using Photoshop. When you start getting into like all these things, it starts getting like, oh, how do I use all these? They're like confusing, especially when we start talking about like masks and 3D and like, do I want to use that? And what are all these options here and stuff? It starts to get a little confusing. I don't want to get into all of that today. There's just a couple more things I want to show you. So first of all, if you are, we used to do an Incredible Hulk project with our students. So funny, you should say that, because I have an Incredible Hulk picture of myself that it looks really bad. I literally did it in 1 second. But basically, I have a picture when I was surfing. Oh, I can't find it. It's on my Facebook profile. I'm not going to pull it up. But I have a picture. I just got out of the water, so I just had my bathing suit on. I gave myself these huge muscles and painted myself green. And then I show the before and after, and I have like a caption that's something funny like toxic ocean or something like that. And I use it for different things like that. But I look like the Incredible Hulk. Like that's something fun you could do with kids, like on, you know, I know that like my boys would enjoy that, doing that in Photoshop, like stuff like that. It is pretty funny. So yes, the Incredible Hulk is something you can do in Photoshop. Color yourself green hair, and look like the Incredible Hulk. It's pretty funny. Yeah, so it's pretty easy to do that stuff. Just two more things that I want to show you guys. So first of all, if you're ever like, where is something? Like, you know, when I went up here and I was like, where is my, I said I need to go back because I need to find my history, but it wasn't here. Like, oh, I just clicked it. It's gone. Where is it? If you always can find, like if you're missing this, your toolbar, if you're missing something, go to Window and find it. They are all right here. I went to Window, History, and there it was. And then I can just place it right back to where it's supposed to be. It just wasn't there. I don't know why. Maybe I clicked it the last time. Maybe it's not there by default, and I just always put it there. But I was like looking for it. I was like, where's my history at? And history allows you to go back. I think in Photoshop, I think you can press undo, like Control Z, 99 times. And history will go back as far as you have saved for the day. So, you know, I can keep doing like a million different things, and then I can just go back through to my history. Like, see all the magic wands here? I can just keep going back through my history to get back to a point that I was at. So if you're ever missing anything, that's what you do it. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's, I want to show you how to like save and talk a little bit about that. Let's see, I can go into image sizes. I'll do that next time. Next time I think I'm going to talk about image sizes. I'm going to show you how to edit some fun stuff. We're going to like change some pictures, like some scenery around and stuff like that, and get into a little more of these tools. So let me just talk about printing and exporting. So first of all, when you save a file in Photoshop, it is always saved as a PSD file. PSD, that's a Photoshop. That's basically like a Photoshop development file. And then you can save as anything else. So I can go to Save As, and I can pick JPEG, or there are all these other kind of file formats. And you're like, oh, this is so confusing. Do I have to know all these? No, you don't. Some of these are very specific, and some of these are outdated. They're not even used anymore. They just still have them. Like, I'm not publishing a TIFF. I don't see anyone use a TIFF anymore at all. EPS is pretty much, well, I'm still working with some companies using EPS, and it's probably the safe way to go for printing versus PDF. But there are all kinds of different ways to save. So if I'm saving a final image that I want to send to someone, I'm either going to send PNG. That's the same thing, but for some reason they decided they didn't like that name anymore, so they changed it. Don't know why, but they did. So we're just going to go to export as, because that's, they say legacy, but they've had it there for like 8 years. So it's not going away. I don't know. But if I want to do a JPEG, so first of all, I'm going to choose my quality. So I could choose PNG or JPEG. See, they have like GIF. We're not using GIFs anymore. I choose what quality do I want to publish this image at. Like maybe my concern is the image size. Okay, so I go to, like right now, it's 217 kilobytes. But I drop it down to quality, it drops down to 38. So let's say my concern here is not quality. Maybe if I take it down to 70, I don't even notice a difference, and it's decreased by half the size of the file. So when I'm like making a web page or a presentation or something, like I do have to really consider who's downloading this and how. Like if I'm having people download on a mobile device, like sure, most people today have 4G. But honestly, not everyone does. A lot of people like live out in the country and stuff. Like when we travel up north, like I have 3G like half the time. There's a lot of people using really slow service. Think like dial-up speed. And we talk about like 5G now. I don't care if you have a phone with 5G or not. There's no 5G in Wilmington. There's no 5G hardly anywhere in the United States. And while we're very optimistic that it's going to be here soon, like it's totally not. It's taking a long time. It should have been here like 2 years ago, and it's not. So it's taken a while. Like, I mean, the latest iPhone doesn't even support 5G, and there's no reason for it to do because hardly anyone even has access to it. And that'll come. I'd say like in 2 to 3 years, there will be no such thing as a phone without 5G, and we'll all have it. But for now, like you know, if you're buying a cell phone right now, you don't need to worry about 5G. But if you're buying a cell phone in like, I'd say the phone after that, like the phone you buy in 2 years from now, yeah, you're gonna want 5G. It'll be in every major city soon enough. It's only in a few, like they're more or less testing it. But that'll provide really quick speeds, and we're not gonna have to worry about this file size as much anyway. I can choose the image size, width, scale, that kind of stuff. And I click export, and it'll export my file. Or I can go to save as, and I can save as a PDF file. Why would I save as a PDF file? A Photoshop PDF file. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, here we go. Here's what I was looking to pull up. So as soon as I go to save as a PDF, what they do is they give me a bunch of options. Again, I can choose my quality. So if I'm printing this, I'm going to choose the highest, but like press quality is more like, and when I say like high quality, like it's going to be a big image. Like it'll be a large file size. The PDF files are big. So like if you're not printing this, you're just sending it to someone to look at, choose press quality. It'll drop the file size significantly. And no matter what kind of computer they have, device, all phones, all computers can open up PDF files. So it's a very safe file format. It's also becoming the standard for printing. So like if I'm printing and sending a file to someone, I'm going to send it as a PDF. That wasn't always the case. And some of the printers that I still work with are using older file types, which are JPEG or EPS files to print. So I'd say the safe way to send a file to someone is still JPEG or EPS. But PDF is becoming, any newer printer standard is becoming PDF. So that's super important, but you can save any file as a PDF. And in fact, if you have Photoshop, you have access to Adobe Acrobat, but like sometimes some of you, someone asked a question, I'll answer that in a second. So let's say that someone sends you a PDF file and you can't like sign it or it's locked or anything like that. Here's a little tip. You can pull it into Adobe Photoshop and do whatever you want to it. It opens it up like an image, and then you can resave it as a PDF file. Little tip, if you can't sign or you're having problems with the PDF file, open it up in Photoshop, sign it, do what you need to, resave it as a PDF. They won't know the difference. So just a little tip if you're having some problems with Adobe Acrobat and PDFs. Because people will send me stuff to sign all the time, and like I can't for whatever reason. I open it up in Photoshop, boom, take care of it. So just a little tip. Okay. Someone asked if you wanted to print a large image, like 11 by 17 or up. I'm not sure what the second part of that question was, but let me just talk a little bit about printing large things. So first of all, there's no issue with printing like large things. It's no different than printing small things, other than file size will be significantly higher, and you have to have a printer that will handle that type of paper. Because there are printers that print like, you know, large, like huge paper, like rolls and stuff. In fact, when I took my Photoshop course, which was like 97, so I took it with a guy, oh, his last name was Clark. I can't remember his first name, but he was one of the pioneers of digital art on the computer. Really interesting, fascinating guy to talk to. But he taught me how to use Photoshop. I took a class with him as an undergraduate student, and he forced us to print our projects. And in fact, some of the samples that I show my students are things I developed in his course, because I still like just loved what I did in there. Like, it was just such a fun. I loved Photoshop, and some of my assignments in my course are based off of what he did. But we had to actually print and mount all of our pieces. So we had to go to a special printer and pay to print like these large poster size prints. And the most interesting part about that whole aspect was watching the color change. And I talked about this like either my last video or the one before that, about the color, how the monitor will differ from what the print looks like. And it was one of the interesting things, you know, one of the big rules in that class was create like a dummy color guide for your image and print it out in your printer so you can match things up. So like if your shade of blue was a little different, or your shade of pink or red or whatever was a little different, you'd be able to match it up. But it was one of the like big lessons. I honestly like I personally don't print anymore. For my wife's company, we do have to print things all the time. And one of the things we've learned from the print process with her company is, so she sells products. She owns a cosmetic company, and it's like hers. It's not like she sells someone else's. It's her. Like, she manufactures, produces. She has employees. Like, it's her company. And when she does like new labels, like I create like a template for her actually, and she does it now, so I don't have to mess with it and spend time doing it. But we've learned like kind of the hard way that when the company sends you a PDF proof to approve, you don't approve it. You have to have them physically send you the hard copy sample so that you can ensure that the colors are correct. Because like you'll have something that's like pretty dark gray on your screen, and it'll be light gray in print, and you can barely read it. Things like that happen all the time. You just can't tell what it's going to look like until it's printed in some cases. You have to try it and then readjust and try again, readjust, try again. You know, it's a lesson that I've learned. So if you are ever printing, make sure that you think about that kind of stuff. Think about the sample first. Know that you're going to have to probably make adjustments to your colors. Things don't always look the same on the computer that they did. You know, and it's the same thing like going into, like, how many times you went to a presentation in a like conference presentation or a teacher's presentation or whatever, a presentation, and you can't see their screen because like the light's on in the room, the projector's really light, whatever is going on. It's just not working with what they developed, because it looked great on their computer in their office at home, but when they took it somewhere else, it just didn't look the same. Same thing with printing. So it's definitely something to think about. But I think that's it for today. I think that's all the stuff I want to cover, unless there are any questions, if anyone wants to pop something up quick. I think on Tuesday what I'm going to do is I will start talking. I want to go into, and I want to show you like how to take and do like full edits to things. Like I want to show you how to edit some people. I want to show you how to do like full edits to scenery. Like let's change someone's hair color. Let's make a bad beach day into a nice beach day, you know, stuff like that. Like play some real tricks on the photo, which is all fun stuff to mess around with and really learn how to do. Because Photoshop is a lot of fun for that kind of stuff, and I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. I always love opening this piece of software up and just seeing what I feel like doing for the day. You know, the one thing I don't use Photoshop for is 3D. If I'm using 3D, I'm going to use a 3D piece of software. Photoshop, like, you know, it's like not made for it. It's like running in basketball shoes. like going for like running a marathon in basketball shoes. Like they're made for running, like sprinting on a basketball court to protect your ankles. Like they're not made for a long distance running. Like you buy long distance running shoes for that. Same thing with Photoshop and 3D. It's like not made for 3D. It's gotten a lot better, but I still just like, it's one thing I don't use Photoshop for whatsoever. So anyway, yeah, that's it for today. I think that's everything. I'll come back and just start showing you. I want to show you just a bunch of features on Photoshop and get into Illustrator too, and show you some Illustrator stuff. Maybe I'll do that like Thursday. So Tuesday I'll do a bunch of stuff in Photoshop. Just show like a bunch of just tips and tricks. Show you how to edit some images, play around with stuff, and then Thursday maybe I'll get into Illustrator and start going through like intro of Illustrator, how to play around with it and everything. All right, later all.